Welcome to another episode of Rethinking the Mundane with Jo and Lex.
This time we're talking about Windows, not Microsoft Windows, glass windows, or anything that's clear, you see through, you don't usually look at it because you're looking past it. Those kind of windows.
It's the number one mundane object, probably arguably, around all of us, right? When we go on buses, we look outside, we know our destinations. Before the bus told you where you was, you would, or before you had a GPS on your mobile phone, you would look through a window to sort of be able to understand your direction, navigation, trains, buses, cars, home, you name it. We're always interacting with a window in some shape or form. And it's so natural. It isn't a conscious thing. Like we've talked about maybe beforehand in the last couple of episodes about microwave. That's very much a conscious, I am walking to the microwave to use it for something. Or we've spoken about pop music where I'm going on my phone, but with the windows, it's a bit more of a natural interface, if
Yes.
could we say, than like
Yeah.
maybe other mundane objects we might talk about.
It's interesting that the first explanation for a window that you mentioned was putting yourself in a place, so knowing where you are, whether that's a destination or looking out the window and seeing a location. My first thought in terms of the function of a window would be to let in light.
Mm.
So it has quite a lot of reasons, I guess, to exist, or
Yeah.
reasons that we have deemed it necessary, because it certainly, we haven't had windows for that long when you think about human existence. We never used to have glass, so typically a window was actually just still technically a window, it was an opening.
Okay.
So if you
Okay.
think
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
like
We
a
can.
middle age, Middle Ages, not Middle Age, a Middle Ages castle, for example, they tiny little slits
Yeah.
there to let in light, but to keep out the elements.
So when was glass kind of like when was the is there like a was there like a discovery of glass and then somehow somebody's like put two and two together and how we got windows?
Yeah, I mean, I think glass probably came around from lightning striking the beach, I'd imagine, and then people realizing that you could make glass from sand. But the idea of then putting it into building, they were typically in churches, I
Mm.
believe. So and then you are able to use them as uh, an opportunity for a piece of art. So like
Yeah.
a stained glass window. Um, Again, in that case, so not something you can see through. And
Yeah.
actually, historically, first glass windows, you could hardly see through them. They were
Yeah.
so
They were up.
kind
Yeah.
of the surface of the glass was so uneven that you couldn't see through. You couldn't
Mm.
see the landscape behind very clearly.
Yeah.
So they have originally been for that lighting. Now, obviously, we want to see where we are. We want to feel that connection with the outside world. Is that because we spend a lot more time indoors than we used to? I mean, you spend a lot of time. We both spend a lot of time indoors because of the nature of the work that we do. And we've got this amazing office that's like floor to ceiling kind of windows,
Windows.
but
Yeah.
absolutely horrific for heating and cooling, and therefore the energy efficiency of the building is terrible.
It's an interesting one when I think of my relationship with Windows, because I think that's why maybe I came from that viewpoint of Windows about place and location. Because I remember at one point I was living in a studio flat in South London, and my studio flat was it was kind of you have the bathroom, you have the kitchen in a separate room, you have this living room slash sleeping room slash workstation environment, and there was only one central window with light coming into the house. But I also lived on a ground floor apartment, and there wasn't no separators. So what would happen, right, is like that's your bedroom, but it's also your workstation. And it was weird for me at times to like, I wanted light to come in, but I also didn't want people to just look in
Yes.
and peek into my
Little.
my house, in it, if you get what I mean. So But also one of the challenging things as well was because there's only one centering point of light, the buildings around it would actually block the lights
Yes.
really well. Like, so it got to a point where it was 3:30 in like winter, and I'm like, bruh, I've been to the light. I didn't even see natural light going on and stuff. And so that was like that first place where I was like, oh, I now understand this natural light concept, or why people, there's like a desire for us most times. We want to build it with natural light, and there is that sort of, you know, desire for us to always have natural light. Where versus where I live now, which has this roof to ceiling windows, where like I got an embarrassment of riches of the amount of natural light that I have. That is such a nice view that I rarely ever have. Like in summertime, it's like the perfect thing ever until you watch TV.
Yes.
Until you watch TV, because I think what's happened with whoever's designed the house is light comes in from the window, then at the back, because it's like this living room and kitchen space together, light comes in through the window. It reflects with a mirror at the back of the kitchen. I don't know why they put these mirrors in the kitchen side, and then it reflects onto the TV. Which necessarily means if you're watching TV in the middle of the day, it's like the worst thing ever. That's my rant over. But that's not my experience of like
of windows.
Just windows in terms of, yeah.
I think the thing that's interesting is in the right time of year, the right time of day, it's the most amazing thing to have the light coming in. It's not too hot, it's not too cold, you've got that connection with the outdoors. But then when you want to see your screen better, it's too much light. Then when in the winter, when the sun's gone down, you've got this big vast blackness that you then have to close up with curtains, so that you then have this, you don't have this sort of black space and this feeling of darkness that's then brought in by that large pane of glass. Then you've got the issue that it's a reflective surface. So for example, like the walkie-talkie is a really good example, that when the sun reflects off of that building, it was bouncing off and onto the pavements below and melting the pavements, because you've effectively got equivalent of a mirror.
Yeah.
And so there's so many things it's good for, and then there's so many issues that we just don't seem to have solved.
So
I don't know how we're going to solve them in like the next 5 minutes, but what if we just got rid of them? Because your connection with the outside, you could just have a screen.
Yeah, but now I'm moving on. Because based on what you've said, right, is it that great in a mundane object then, if it needs to have so much variables in order for it to work well? But you know, and that's a question that we ask you, the audience, because this why we're talking about Windows today actually came from somebody in the comments somewhere. I'm not sure what platform, but who suggested we should talk about Windows. And so we put this to you based on what we're saying here. It's like, are Windows that great of an object in a way if they need so much variables at times to be perfect, to be good? Yeah, in that type.
Yeah, there's also so many things I feel that we could do with a pane of glass. There was a project in 2018 by Ford that was looking at how they could send vibrations through a window in the back of a car that would allow people who had eyesight issues, whether they were blind or partially sighted, to actually feel the landscape behind the window, because they couldn't see it. And so by sending these vibrations through the window, and that would change based on a camera picking up what was actually beyond the window, you could feel the landscape beyond. And I think it was quite a conceptual kind of idea, but there was some technology that they'd obviously deemed to be feasible.
Yeah.
We have so many screens in our lives. Could we not use the window for more than just a portal to the outside?
I think there's that.
I mean, what if you're in a place where the view outside isn't very good? I mean, we spend how much, I can't imagine how much value is added to a property by the idea that you have a view. And so if you could convert your ground floor flat in I don't know, black wall that has absolutely no view whatsoever, not your ground floor flat and back wall because you don't have one, but if you could convert a ground floor flat and back wall into something that feels as if you're on the 15th story in Manhattan by replacing a window with a screen that projects that,
Yeah.
would that give us the same feeling? Would we still feel as if we looked out of the, to quote, window, and actually it was just a view of Manhattan?
Yeah. But also, there's that thing where when I think about when we were talking about repurposing the window or giving this window a new purpose, there's just something in my head which came to mind about like also in London for some or in the UK or maybe London we have mold problems.
Yes.
And like they somehow it's always linked to condensation on windows, right? And then that's where you get like the mold or the mildew. Yeah, I think that's how you pronounce it. Because I know when I also lived in this ground floor apartment, you put the heater up because it was single glazing windows.
Yeah.
So in winter time, if that heater's not on, crazy. You put the heater on, but what happens is the windows steam. But there's no like efficient ventilation in the house to like sort of okay, windows steam, okay, heaters down, ventilation. So what used to happen is I used to wake up every morning and have this I went on YouTube because after a while I was having this condensation that wasn't going, and if you don't, and I was getting mold on the windows. I was like, nah, I need to sort this out, and then I have to get like this window cleaner back and clean it every day.
Yeah.
Literally soaking up the windows because if I didn't do that, it's gonna create mold and mildew. So it's like if you now repurpose these windows with, how do we solve that sort of like, not every home has, obviously the newer builds have double glazing windows. It's obviously people can install double glazing in their homes. But how do we solve those issues? Because of we still got the energy argument to talk about because
Yes.
single glazing windows leak a lot of energy compared to double glazing. And if we put these sophisticated systems of like new screens and stuff there, like
then we
cause more problems,
problems.
right?
Yeah,
so how do we?
There was a statistic I was looking up before we started today, and it's that the energy consumption in cooling our properties has doubled since the year 2000.
Okay.
And it's only going to double again by 2040 mostly due to rising temperature of the earth.
Yeah.
But also because we're building more high rises that are fully sealed because they are glass all the way up, and those glass each panel is held in place with plastic, and so we're creating a building that is not breathable at all, and so you have to artificially allow that air to circulate with air conditioning, and that almost like that's like I think 60-70% more energy to do that than if we had mechanical ventilation, so like a windows that actually opened. But obviously if you then have to put on all those mechanisms, you create other issues because you've got complexity in how they open and close and things going wrong there. But all of this comes from us wanting this floor to ceiling glass. And there's so much embodied energy in glass. It's so energy intensive to produce. It's, I think, like many times more energy to produce like a glass building than it would be a timber framed building. So why are we, what's our obsession with making everything glass? And I think that for me personally, there feels as if we're just absolutely desperate for that connection with the outside because we're just unable to, we don't believe we can, whether that's because of our job, because of our laziness, we're just unable to actually just get up and get outside ourselves. And so we're just like, well, I'll bring the outside in by creating basically a portal.
But with a limit, right? Because because there's a thing you mentioned where you're like, what if we don't have the window and we just go back to the Middle Ages?
Yes.
And just have slits. But then people are like, I want to protect myself.
Yeah.
From bugs and all of them things there. And like,
I mean, we're killing off the insect population at a rapid rate because of our impact on the environment. So soon there won't be any insects, so we don't have to worry about bugs. If you drive a car, because if you drove a car, you'll know that there's so many less bugs on the windscreen now than there was even 10 years ago. So we'll have no bugs issues. Maybe a bird will still fly in.
Yeah, but we need a bug for protein.
But we will have issues with the weather.
Because that's what I was going to think about. I don't know if you know anything about like UV rays and stuff and like how that enters, you know. Because I know, like, for example, there are folks who, like, for example, like when we talk about like SPF or sunscreen, and I remember once having a conversation with someone and I was like, oh, have you got sunscreen in the home? And I'm like, no, because my home office window isn't directly at the sun. It's kind of hidden.
Yeah.
She was like, no, you have to
still wear sunscreen.
And I'm like, okay, so.
Well, people think that glass stops the UV rays, but if you look at any long distance driver, they'll always, in the UK anyway, their right arm will be really tanned and their left arm won't be, because they're sitting there and the left side of their body is in the sun through the window.
Okay.
So it implies you obviously are still getting the sun's rays.
Yeah.
Which obviously we want that vitamin D, so maybe that is a positive thing. I think it's a really interesting topic, and we've riffed on a few ideas here. I think there's definitely some untapped potential with regards to how the window could be used more effectively, whether there's opportunities for us to use it in some kind of tech way better. There's some work that's being done, I think, or trials that have been done on using windows as a way of heating water. So having water is a layer in between two glass panels. As the sun comes through the window, it heats the water, and then you can move that water away, use it as warm water, and then heat more water.
Yeah.
So you're actually using that natural sort of heating process for something positive. But it feels like quite complicated. Something that could go wrong. You wouldn't want anything to break on that window. It's a lot of water everywhere. But yeah, I mean, a really good suggestion for us to chat about. And I'm sure that as soon as we stop talking about it, I'll have loads of good ideas, and we'll have to record another episode. But please let us know what you think about the thing that is as boring as a window. And if you've got a better suggestion or a different suggestion or another idea, let us know in the comments, and we'll chat about it next week.
Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Cheers.